One of the things that I think a lot of beach volleyball players struggle with, and I know that I get asked this all the time, and I have absolutely no answer because I'm constantly running myself into the ground, is the balance between getting the extra reps and making sure you're properly rested and recovered. Because I remember one of Kobe's big things was he wanted to win the math problem, right? So when he was in, I think, middle school or high school, he wasn't as good as some of his teammates and some of the kids he was playing against. He was like, well, if they're practicing 3 days a week for 2 hours and I practice 6 days a week for 3 hours, then the amount of extra hours and reps that I'm putting in, I'm going to win the math problem by so much that it's impossible for me to not be better than them. And so I kind of take that approach a lot, but then I'm like, but I'm winning the math problem, but I'm just getting crushed in the rest and recovery problem. So then there's this balance. And what tools or tricks or tips or whatever would you have for athletes who kind of want to get the extra reps, but also don't want to run themselves into the ground?
It is an incredibly individualized answer. We all have to be able to step back, especially with Kobe as an example, because he's kind of been that one that we've all looked towards. And we have to understand he was a once in a million, once in a generation type of human being. You know, Kobe did espouse the mindset that more is better. You work out twice a day, I work out 3 times a day. You work out for 2 hours, I work out for 3 hours. You know, you take a day off, I never take a day off. And for most people, that's a recipe for either burnout or injury. Kobe was just such an anomaly that it was okay for him. And I would have young players say that all the time. And I would say, you know, with a wink and a smile, yeah, you're not Kobe Bryant. Like, I understand where you're going with this, but I do think everyone has a different threshold. Everyone has a different work capacity, and that will even fluctuate, you know, even as we get older. You know, I'm 45 years old. I can't run and jump and lift to the same degree that I could when I was 25. Like, I simply can't do everything that I could do back then. And there's certain things that if I did do them, I'd be sore for 3 or 4 days now, when in my 20s, I could do that stuff every single day. So some of it is the maturity and the humility of saying, you know, I'd like to believe I'm wiser and smarter now than I was in my 20s, but I can't do everything the same way that I did it. You know, I mean, in your 20s, you can work out for 5 hours, you can go drinking with your friends that night, you can be up early the next day, having got no sleep, and you can still perform at a high level. If I do any of those things right now, I'm not going to be very good the next day, and I can acknowledge that. One thing that I think is important, and even this is a little bit on a spectrum, because I do believe there is a benefit to training when you are tired and learning how to push through fatigue. I'm not saying that that's not important, but I did learn something from Kyle Korver that I thought was really important. Someone asked how long he does his shooting workouts for, and he said basically until, and that was kind of his answer. And then he elaborated on it. He said, until I'm not shooting with perfect form. When I get to the point that I'm so fatigued that I'm not shooting with perfect form, I'm letting my, you know, my hand sink down, or I'm not getting the same lift. He said, then I don't take another shot, because I don't want to practice doing something the wrong way. I don't want to get repetitions doing incorrect form. His terminology, which makes so much sense, is I don't want to get good at bad shooting. And I think we can all fall victim to that. So I think on some level, there'll be a day where you both are rested and hydrated and feeling great, and you can go 2 hours and you still look so sharp with everything that you do. There might be another day at the 1 hour mark, you just look at each other and go, you know what, I'm a little off right now. Like, I'm not, and that might be okay to pull the plug. That doesn't mean you're quitting. That doesn't mean you can't push through fatigue. It means you're trying to be really strategic and smart and say, right now, I'm not going to get any more return on an extra investment of being out here. So let's call it a day. You know, let's go get some rest and recovery. Let's eat a good meal, get some good sleep, and let's come back out tomorrow morning and start fresh. I think that's really about being smart. And one of the things that we're seeing that, and we're seeing that all of the time now, is with the load management in the NBA. And coaches and general managers saying, you know, we need these guys fresh for preseason, 82 games plus playoffs. So we want to be very judicious in the minutes we play and how much toll we put on them. It's not the old blood and guts routine of basketball in the 80s and 90s, which of course I grew up on. You know, it's saying, how can we be smart in the long term? And I think that ultimately, I would hope, would answer your question, Travis, is saying, for the long term, if here's the North Star, what is the best decision I can make today that will get me closer to that North Star? And sometimes that's pushing hard for 2 hours. And sometimes that's calling it quits after an hour with absolutely no guilt. And I can't stress enough, pulling the plug on a workout does not mean you're lazy, does not mean you're weak, does not mean that you can't push through fatigue. It means you're actually smart enough to honor yourself and your body and say, you know what, that's good enough for today. We'll pick it up fresh tomorrow. Because we all should be doing this for the long game. And that I think is important. And it's never easy. And everybody's different. Even you two guys may have slightly different work capacities and thresholds for certain things. So even volleyball partners might not be on the exact same page with that. So there has to be kind of a dance between the two to figure it out.